I'm Kristen Little, Vice President at Goldman Sachs and member of our 1 Million Black Women team. The firm is super excited to be here this week to be part of the summit. We are super excited to be partnering with Black Enterprise on this panel, Advancing to Your Dream Position. Just for some background on 1 Million Black Women, this is a $10 billion investment initiative with $100 million in philanthropic capital to drive economic opportunity for at least 1 million Black women by 2030. Yeah. We focus on investing in the key moments of a Black woman's life, from early childhood through retirement. We're super data-driven. We focus on investing in solutions across housing, access to capital, healthcare, education, of course, workforce advancement, which is why we're here today. Our approach was informed by a seminal research report called Black Womenomics. It was released by Goldman Sachs back in 2021. It's on gs.com if you care to read it. I don't think the findings would be too surprising for this room, but essentially it highlights the extremely stark racial and gender gaps that Black women have faced for decades. One of those, of course, being the wealth gap. Black women face a 90% wealth gap compared to the single median white man. And actually that wealth gap is being driven by an earnings gap. And so we created 1 Million Black Women to try to close those gaps. But the upside is also massive. If we close those gaps, we can create 1.5 million jobs and inject $450 billion into the US GDP. So this is not a fluffy initiative. This is a strong investment in Black women. We understand that these systemic issues require a sustained investment from the private sector, and so we're going to continue to show up and do this work. The video you actually just saw is one of our many investments in Black women. This is our Black in Business education program for Black women sole proprietors. This is an extremely competitive program. 3% of applicants get in. Actually, 2 of our alum are speaking at this conference this week. Shout out to Sania El Amin and Lakeisha Womack. But we created this because we were listening and the evidence was clear to us that entrepreneurship equalizes. Black women are starting businesses and becoming CEOs of their businesses faster than any other demographic. We also know that entrepreneurship has the opportunity to create economic opportunity and drive wealth creation for Black women, their families, and Black America. But we also recognize that entrepreneurship is not the path to success for everyone. A lot of us, like myself, would prefer to just climb the corporate ladder. And so one of our other investments in workforce advancement is in Level Up, created by the Brooklyn Public Library, right in our backyard in New York. This program is actually for Black women to pivot into high-earning industries like real estate, tech, and finance. And so we're seeing these positive ripple effects from both of these programs. With Black in Business, our women are creating more revenue, which is allowing them to create jobs and hire people from their communities. With Level Up, these women are creating their networks, pivoting into their dream position, and also being able to potentially earn more money, mentor others, and inspire the next generation of Black women leaders. And that's how we truly create change. So with that, I just want to say thank you again for being here. Thank you again to Black Enterprise. I will now turn it over to Selena Hill, who will be moderating this panel. Thank you.
I'd like to welcome the moderator of our conversation on advancing to your dream position, Selena Hill, Director of Multiplatform Content for Black Enterprise.
Good morning, ladies. Y'all look good. Did y'all enjoy the conversations that count? How many got something out of that? Raise your hand. It was really so good. I loved it as well. So, as Asia mentioned, I'm here on behalf of Black Enterprise, and I'm super excited to talk about advancing to your dream position and just how to advance in your career with an amazing panel of incredible women. By a show of hands, how many people believe that hard work, producing stellar results, and receiving a top performance rating are keys to advancing in your career? Raise your hand. Anybody say no? Raise your hand. Okay. Well, according to a 2022 MIT Sloan study that looked at 30,000 employees at a large retail chain, women on average received higher performance ratings, yet were still marked as having less potential as male counterparts. And as a result, these women were 14% less likely to advance or be promoted in comparison to their male colleagues. Meanwhile, a 2022 Women in the Workplace study that was conducted by McKinsey & Co. and Lean In, they surveyed 276 companies in the public sector, private sector, and the social sector, and they found that for every 100 men who are promoted from entry level to a managerial position, only 87 women are promoted, while only 54% of Black women receive that same opportunity, making our demographic the least likely to be promoted from entry level to manager position. So this phenomenon is actually called the broken rung. Raise your hand if you've heard of that phrase before, the broken rung. Absolutely. And for those who haven't, it's basically like if you think of a ladder, the corporate ladder, if that first rung is broken, it puts Black women and anyone else at a disadvantage of ascending in their career and climbing the corporate ladder. And a lot of times, a lot of us even get stuck at lower level positions. And normally it starts very early. So to help us better understand the obstacles that prevent women from elevating in their careers, we have an incredible panel of executives who've managed to climb to the top of the corporate ladder. I'll start with Lashanda Cobbs. She was actually just promoted this month to Chief Operating Officer of Genoa Healthcare, which is owned by UnitedHealth Group. All the love, yes. Previously, she served as Vice President of Clinical Field Operations for UnitedHealthcare for Community and State. She also served in the U.S. Army for 30 years, eventually retiring as Colonel. Thank you, Lashanda. We also have with us Yolanda Friend. She is the Managing Director of North America Inclusion and Diversity Lead at Accenture, where she leads actions to increase representation of diversity, build inclusive leaders at all levels, and create an environment where everyone can equitably showcase their skills. Welcome, Yolanda. I love this crowd. Okay. We have with us as well Lindsay Peoples. She is the editor-in-chief at New York Magazine's The Cut. Under her leadership, The Cut has published high-profile interviews with the likes of Meghan Markle and launched Generation Next, a mentorship initiative which invited diverse designers to showcase their lines at New York Fashion Week. Lindsay is also the co-founder of the Black in Fashion Council, and she has been named on the Forbes 30 Under 30 list and the Black Enterprise 40 Under 40 list. Welcome, Lindsay. Lastly, but certainly not least, we have Olanda Sharp-Buckley. She is the Vice President of Customer Technical Training and Education at Dell Technologies, where she leads team members in 30 countries that deliver 6 million technical learning hours annually to customers, partners, and internal team members. Welcome, Olanda. Okay. So there are many factors, right, that prevent women from rising in corporate. That can include a hostile work environment, bias, but I found one very interesting reason. So women, we tend to spend a disproportionate amount doing what's known as invisible labor, right? So it's setting up the team meetings, setting up the team celebrations, taking notes, or even leading low revenue and low visibility projects. Anybody ever be tasked with something like that? Taking notes at the meeting? Exactly. And what happens is this takes away from the time and energy we need to pursue promotable things, tasks, and things that will get us the attention that we deserve. So my question for the panel is, throughout your time in corporate America, what are some of the reasons that you notice prevented women from advancing in their career?
I'm happy to start. Thank you. It's a really great question and something that I consistently reflect on. And one of the gifts that I received at Accenture is learning about this phenomenal framework. It's called PIE, P-I-E. The P stands for performance, the I stands for image, and the E stands for exposure. And what I didn't realize is how much those three components really propel and dictate your career trajectory. And the amount of weight that's assigned to each piece, each slice of that pie matters. So a lot of times we do focus on the performance and getting all the work done and being very prepared, which is all table stakes. But that slice of the pie, that performance, is 10% weighted. 30% is your image, so that's your personal brand. And then the biggest slice of that pie is exposure, of astounding 60%. And that's about who knows you and who knows what you're doing. And that is what leads people to seek out sponsors, to make sure that you have advocates in rooms where you aren't yet, who know what you're doing, who can talk to other leaders about the impact and contributions that you're making. And I think for me, that's one of the biggest lessons that really always sticks with me, is performance is table stakes. You've got to be there doing your job, digging in, getting under the details, mastering your craft. But at the same time, you have to focus on exposure, and that's very intentional and it's very strategic.
Absolutely. Great answer, Yolanda. Anyone have anything to add?
Yeah, kind of tying on to Yolanda's answer, I think that also we have to, and I don't know that women are very comfortable in doing this, but we have to teach people how to view us. We have to create the perspective that we want them to walk away with. So if you want someone to walk away saying, you know, Lashanda, she is very analytical. Well, you have to create those adjectives and you have to create that environment so that those are communicated over and over and over again. To do that, you also have to have a voice. And you can't be afraid to use your voice. People need to hear your voice, because the way that that perspective is established is not only the way that they're going to see you, but it's also the way that they're going to deal with you. And it's also the way that they are going to talk about you in rooms that you aren't in. And so until you're able to do that and do it comfortably, you will run the risk of being irrelevant, because if your voice is not heard, then you're not contributing. And if you're not contributing, especially in the environment where we are in now with so many corporate positions, when organizations are having to, streamline, cut down. So if you're not relevant, then you're expendable. So women have to be able to find their voice, and during that exposure, they've got to be able to communicate their ideas and contributions.
Yeah. And I think we're waiting on someone to come to us for the opportunity. The reality is, you know what needs to be done. You know what's of value. And so you can't sit around and wait for someone to call you and say, hey, Yolanda, I have an opportunity for you. No, Yolanda can create her own opportunity by saying, no, let me tell you what I'm going to do for you. So the reality is, everyone's not going to come knocking on your doorstep with an opportunity.
So I would add to that, and those are all great answers, ladies. I myself, when I started at Black Enterprise years ago, I was a full-time freelancer. In 6 months, I was promoted to a full-time employee. 6 months from that date, I was promoted again. Got my third promotion in 2021, and then my fourth promotion January of this year. And I feel like for me, the keys to ascending in the organization were effective communication, being a team player, being likable, and not being afraid to take on tasks that were impactful to the company. So, my question for you guys, and I'll start with you, Lindsay, what soft skills and strategies helped you get promoted and recognized?
I think
specifically working in media and magazines, for me it was that I wasn't honestly concentrated so much on the title, but just the respect and kind of making legacy work that I was really interested in. I think fashion it's tricky because you're working at a publication which is run by a corporation, but so much of the hiring is subjective, like if people like you or if they feel like you fit in or they feel like you make sense for the brand, right? And when people say on brand, that could mean a lot of things, but oftentimes it doesn't mean a Black woman. Oftentimes it means like they want somebody who is only very specific and in their mind, palatable to a white experience. And so for me, it always was, I just want to make work that's undeniable. I want to make work that feels like it's in my purpose, but it wasn't necessarily set on, I need to be an editor-in-chief to make this kind of work. It was like, I'm going to make this kind of work and all of that will come and follow.
That's amazing. I know for me, another thing that I was intentional about very early on was forming relationships and cultivating those relationships at the company and just being strategic about that, because I've seen people who are overlooked and bypassed simply because, like you said, people don't know who you are. People aren't really paying attention to the work, but when you speak up and you're not afraid to take up space, it does go far. Yolanda, I know that you've been at Accenture since 2006. What helped you to advance within your organization?
Goodness. I think that I'll go back to what I was mentioning around that pie formula. I keep that in my mind consistently. And what's really helped me along is also having effective and meaningful sponsor relationships in the organization. I think that is something that cannot be overlooked. It cannot be underestimated because you originally aren't in all the rooms where the decisions are being made and your career trajectory is being assessed. And you need someone at the table who's there who can speak to your accomplishments and represent you and has the network and the relationship capital to make moves. And I think that is all predicated on having strong relationships in the organization. And so I recommend being very strategic about those individuals that you're cultivating relationships with, because it makes a difference. And even as you progress in your career, you'll start to see that, I've been in a position where I stepped up to lead my peers. So cultivating relationships 360, it's not just about managing up, it's about looking all the way around at all of your relationships, because you never know, the people who are leading your organization now aren't necessarily the same people who will be leading it when you step up to the table. The people who are on your teams now, they could very well even progress and become your lead one day. So it's really about making sure that you're treating people in an equitable and respectful way and forging strong relationships across the board in a 360 value way.
Olanda, I know you as well started at Dell in 2006. Can you speak to anything that you found to be strategic and helpful in your ascension?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, it's Olanda, so I'm
Olanda, I'm sorry
Yolanda without the Y. So in my career, it's really been following the customer journey. So I'm in the land of tech, and so I am always, and I tell my team, I'm unapologetic about putting the customer first. I'm going to put the customer before them, before me, before anyone else. And so in my career, I actually have followed the customer journey from I can create your product from a product group perspective, marketing. I can actually sell it to you because I've been in sales. I can actually deliver it because I spent 4 years in Malaysia in engineering, so we can actually build it for you. I can deliver it because I know logistics and supply chain. I can actually help you with your assets break. I know security and cyber, and I can financially manage it. And so for me, all of those tools in my toolkit, the secret was the customer. So if you get a chance to look in your toolkit, and if you haven't had a chance to be in an environment where you touched finances, or you haven't touched the sales side of your business, it is actually a gift. And it's the secret sauce is really, if you can understand how to run every part of the company, when you do step into the executive side, the CEO side, you understand the company landscape end to end. So for me, my success, it came from the customer and really understanding what happens before me and after me. And you have to know your brand. My brand, customers come before any and everything.
That what you just said reminded me of something. I feel like in my experience, what I've noticed is that people are promoted according to their skill set that the company or organization finds valuable. We all play a role. We're all working together, but it's certain skills and it's certain things, usually those who are bringing in a lot of money, who get the recognition simply because that's their focus. So I would say whatever is a skill set that your company or even just the industry finds valuable, I would focus on that if you are definitely, looking to rise and to continue to advance. But Lashanda, you were in the Army for 30 years, as I mentioned. Can you talk about any skills or strategies or tools that you learned while serving in the Army that were then transferable and helped you in your career in corporate?
So, the Army, very male-dominated organization, and so that gives you the confidence. Also, the officer side of the military is also male-dominated and not a lot of African Americans. And so the skills and the ability to strategize in that organization has really transferred nicely. Being able to critically think and recognize that when you are in the rooms, it is chess and not checkers, and you have to always be thinking about second and third order impacts. If I say this, then what are they gonna think? What are they gonna do? What's their move gonna be? And so always trying to stay 2 or 3 steps ahead, but also understanding what makes people comfortable, right? I learned to play golf during one of my assignments because my boss was a big golfer. And if you are going to sit in the meetings on Monday, you need to be able to talk about what course you played that weekend. You need to be able to talk about what your handicaps were. And so it was in the Army that I really learned to navigate and understand the landscape that I was in. It has transferred over because in corporate America, you also have to make sure you know where the landmines are, that you don't step on them. What does that mean? That means understanding how the game is played, where you are, understanding what the rules are. Who are those folks that you need to know? How do you ensure that those folks see you as a valued member? Because you're not gonna walk around with your credentials on your sleeve, but you have to be able to find a way to communicate and ensure folks know what you're bringing to the table. One example, when I was in the military, I went to one assignment and everybody in Army medicine, so the person that said who probably knows this, everybody in Army medicine went to Baylor University. I chose not to go to Baylor. And so when I got to a new assignment, my boss said, well, you're not a Baylor Bear. What are you bringing to the table? And I said, well, I didn't go to Baylor, but I went to Duke. And he kind of stopped talking. And so from that point, I was good. So then it was, hey, make sure the Dookie is in the room when we're having this conversation. And so you have to be able to interweave the things that you want people to know. Again, it's about what is the perspective that I want you to walk away with after you have engaged with me. And I learned that in the Army.
I don't know how many folks were here yesterday when Linda Clemens spoke, but one of the things she said is, put the differences aside. We may be a different race, a different gender, etc. But what is it that we do have in common? Like you said, and there's always some commonality there or familiarity. Sometimes it takes a little digging, but we're all human. Maybe it's just they have kids, I have kids. Something that will help you bridge that gap. I want to talk about the challenges that you each have faced or setbacks that you each have faced while climbing the corporate ladder.
I can start. This always comes to me easy because the first thing that I think about is my age. I think a lot of people, when I became editor-in-chief of Teen Vogue, I think I just turned 26, 27. And in this job, I remember when I became editor-in-chief there was a lot of press around, like, she's the youngest and all of that. And then as soon as I would get into a meeting, though, people would be like, well, you're young. And I'm like, you can't actually use this as a press, and it's a double-edged sword, right? And so I think that it was a challenge for me. And even in starting this job, I was a lot younger than my predecessor. And I think that a lot of times for me, it just became a conversation where I would tell people, like, you know, I'm appreciative, obviously, that, you know, I've been given such responsibility at a young age, but also I know what I'm doing and I can handle the responsibility. And I think that using it as, you know, yes, a press rollout of, oh, you know, she's so young to be able to do this, but then also I would say, like, because I am young, I do understand this audience. I do understand what it means when someone is doing a green screen takeover on TikTok about this trend. I do understand why we actually need to care about this audience and target, you know, a younger audience in this way. And I do understand how to use our platform to kind of expand our audience, as a lot of magazines are laying people off and we're growing. And so I think a lot of the challenges that I was aware of, I just tried to turn it on its head and actually use it as a positive, but also show that it doesn't actually mean anything. It's more so about the work that I'm bringing to the table.
And that really resonates with me, yes. Clap. It resonates with me for a couple of reasons. It reminds me of one of my favorite quotes, which is, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And it's all about having that growth mindset. So even if something feels like a setback, it's really just a setup for the next opportunity. And sometimes it's not all clear when it's happening, but if you have the growth mindset and you look at it as an opportunity, then you will definitely grow. And I have a great example of how this came full circle for me personally. When I was client-facing in my career, because in a 19-year history with Accenture, I've had multiple roles and responsibilities, but I was client-facing, I was traveling full-time, I was supporting 2 different clients in 2 different locations, and it was very trying for me because it was hard to maintain that level of rigor in my professional life, and also, you know, I'm out here trying to date and do other things and, you know, get my personal life going. And so at one point, client number 2 came back and told my leads, you know, wow, we like Yolanda a lot, but she just doesn't seem fully committed here because she's splitting her time. And so instantly I was removed from that role. And on the surface, it was first initially a little shocking and a little bit devastating. But then I just quickly bounced back from that, and I said, you know what, that's their loss. And it just so happened that that happened the day before my birthday. So I'm in town randomly on my birthday, didn't have a meeting, didn't have plans. I woke up, got a facial, went to the gym, and wouldn't you believe this, I met my now husband that day.
Come on.
At the gym. At the gym. Life moves fast. We started a family. I changed career paths, moved into HR, which led to all of these different career touch points. And now I'm a managing director leading the entire function, North America, Inclusion and Diversity at Accenture. If that hadn't happened,
Yes.
the path is ordered. It's also a lot about, spirituality and faith, but I know that's not what this is about. But I do think everything happens for a reason, and having that growth mindset is really what can propel you through anything that would be considered a setback originally.
I love that.
Thank you.
If I could just tag on, I think what you said, there's a book, John Maxwell, if you guys follow John Maxwell, he has a book that says, sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. And so you really have to look at some of those setbacks as an opportunity. It absolutely is going to sting when somebody tells you no or says we're going to remove you from it. But you have to take that opportunity to, 1, be humble, and then 2, really look at what am I supposed to learn from this? And there was something that was in this that wasn't necessarily for me. Reassess what the track is that you're supposed to be on and be open. Shonda Rhimes has a book, A Year of Yes. Be open to yes, whatever else comes next.
I mean, the reality is when you get to the executive level, some things just suck. I mean, everyone thinks you get here and it's like everyone listens to you because you have this wonderful title. And I'll tell you, when you are doing good and life is going great, that is when the devil comes hard. Because he's not coming after sinners. They're already doing what they're supposed to do. And so sometimes the challenges are the people sitting right next to you. And so the discernment that you have to really have is, I want to know who's throwing knives at me. I want to know, like, the landmines that are coming. And so you are going to be faced with that. So for me, I have definitely, in the land of technology, there is not going to be a lot of people that look like us in this room. The reality is the pipeline to backfill me does not look like this room. And so when you get promoted, I've had people say, well, you know why she got promoted? She's a woman and she's black. It's like a trifecta. And so you have to know that those things are going to come. And sometimes they come from people that look like people in this room. And so I will tell you, my career over 18 years, it has not been sunshine and roses. The knives have come, and there were lessons in it. You have pity parties. And so you just have to know, like we talked about, you have to have a plan. This is chess. You have to be 2, 3, 4, 5 steps. Like, I'm sure right now there is something happening at work that is probably blowing up my phone, which I actually turned it off, that is going to be a fire that I get to put out. And someone is probably cheering, saying, burn, 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 burn. And so it is going to happen. And so I cannot tell you 1, 2, 3 obstacles that you're going to face. When you decide to get into a role like we have, it is going to come with a set of challenges. And so what I will tell you is, have a plan, have patience, and have prayer. Because that is going to be the only thing that is going to get you through the problems and obstacles that are going to come your way.
I know, that's right. You know, Yolanda, I like how you said turning setbacks into setups. It reminds me, in 2018, Lindsay, you published a critically acclaimed article. I read that there was a Black human resource manager, speaking to what you were saying, who warned you, I guess that's the right word to use, about a picture. You posted a controversial picture that had an unapologetically Black phrase online. And rather than taking it down, you used that as an opportunity to explore racism in the fashion industry. When is it okay to challenge corporate norms, to challenge the company culture while you're still seeking advancement in that same organization?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, what you were saying about a plan and patience and prayer, that's really the formula. But I think it also, for me, was that, there are going to be times where I have to put my feet to the fire. And I felt like, I'm a list girl. I wrote down all of the reasons why I shouldn't write the piece Everywhere and Nowhere, what it's like to be Black in fashion, because no one really wanted to talk about the racism. No one really wanted to state the obvious of things that were happening. Everybody loves to shoot Black culture and talk about how great we are and how beautiful, but then not hire Black people, especially in fashion. And I just felt like, okay, yes, I'm too young and I may not have the same resources as other editors or people who've been in the industry too long, and I came from the Midwest and I don't have these connections and I don't come from money. But on the pro side, I just thought, if I don't do this, nobody else will. If I don't say this right now, I think things are just going to continue on the same. And so it was a big, I remember, one of the conversations I had interviewed around like 200 different Black people for this piece. And I remember one of them told me, and someone who I really, look up to and respect, that, she was like, honestly, if you do this, you're never going to get a job. You're never going to get a job again. You're going to get blackballed because, we can't speak up about these things. And if you really want to climb, like, this isn't the way. And I prayed about it, and I said, I'm still going to do it. Because I just think that it also for me was that I didn't want to rise and not have the integrity that I have. Like, I think that that's really important for me to have a sense of fortitude and who I am and who God has called me to be to do the work. I don't think that I can separate those two. And so I didn't want to just rise and get a role and a title, but then it be hollow, right? And so that was really important to me. And I made it really clear to my boss after I published it. I want to say also that I was terrified when I published this piece. So I wasn't just like going in, I felt that way, but once it was up, obviously I was like, oh God, like here we go. I actually left the country. I went to Mexico for a day. I was like, I just need to flee. Flee is actually more accurate. But I went to Mexico. I turned my phone off because I was like, look, God, it's yours. Like, this is what I'm supposed to do right now, hands off. Next day I turned my phone on, and yeah, I mean, everything was different. Nothing was the same.
Speaking of those challenges and how we navigate, has anyone here on the panel, anyone else ever faced a boss who was jealous or sexist or racist? Or, okay, a couple of us here can admit it. Not everyone can, because we're sitting by our colleagues and our coworkers. So, like, I get it. But can you talk about some of those challenges? It's real, right? Like, people are human. And, sometimes we have bad days. Sometimes we're in a bad era. And we take it out on our inferiors, or we feel like it's being taken out on us. So how do you navigate that?
I'm in a male-dominated world. So, yes, I have experienced that in different ways. I've been called out for my color. I've been called out for my gender. I've been called out for my age. You name it. They're going to come for you. The reality is there's just a couple things that I can't tolerate. It is when your ignorance impacts my integrity. Mm-hmm. And so those are the things that you have to decide. But if I got into a fight defending every time someone threw something at me, I'm light. I'll be black, blue. Mac couldn't cover that up. And so I will tell you, I've had situations where jealousy, and what happens with jealous bosses is they think you want their job. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you, I've never had a jealous male boss.
Mm-hmm. Come on now.
Ever. And so you have to recognize that, and where you have choices and options, but this is where your sponsorship and mentors come in at. Mm-hmm. Because it doesn't matter if the person you report to is jealous or has problems. If their boss's boss is in the room saying, well, I don't see that from Olanda. So you have to ensure that in rooms that you are talked about, by the way. And if you're not, that's a different situation. But if you are being talked about for an opportunity, that is when you have to make sure that your advocates and sponsors are in the room. But yes, I've been passed by for jobs. I'll give you a situation. I've been at Dell for 18 years. I've had people hired who have come in at higher grade levels that I've trained. True story. I sit next to them. 10 years ago, I'm sitting next to them. They're hired in. I'm now 2 or 3 levels above them. Because what was for me was for me. Mm-hmm. And so you have to recognize that you are going to have haters. You are going to have people that are jealous. You are going to have people that they will offend you. And I will tell you, offending you goes to a new level when you deal with global teams, because sometimes it's not intentional. So I think that's where the discernment comes in. Is this person intentionally doing harm to you? Or are they unaware? And are you allowing them to treat you that way because you don't speak up? Like, for example, I meant no harm when I corrected my name. Mm-hmm. In rooms, how many times has someone called you by your incorrect name, but you didn't take the time to correct them because you didn't want to come across as the angry black woman, even though they are calling you by the wrong name? Mm-hmm. So what I would say is sometimes people are doing wrong by you because they think that's how they're supposed to treat you, because you haven't given them any reason to not treat you that way. Mm-hmm. So I would tell you, I don't go around defending myself because I do look and make sure that I didn't do something offensive because I'm very direct, so I probably did do something, but I didn't mean to. But I can't go around and fist fight. And I'll be honest, at our levels, how we respond,
That matters.
it matters big time. So I will say, let other people's go, but other people will defend you, by the way. Your huck, you get you a huck, and you will never have to fight them battles because somebody's already taken them in the back.
Thank you for
I
that.
don't condone violence. But if you accidentally trip somebody here and there, it's okay.
We do have to go to question and answer. So if you do have a question, please feel free to line up in the middle. We'll begin to start those questions. But, just to speak to that point, it really does matter how we're telling our own stories because we are going to face oppressive people. But like you said, the mentors and the sponsors that are in the room when we're not there, if they can speak up for us, sometimes that goes so far. But they can't speak up for us if we're not speaking up and advocating for ourselves. If we're not asking, hey, can I take you out to lunch? Can I talk about this project with you? Can I give you some feedback? Can you give me some constructive criticism? Once again, you start cultivating those relationships and they see, this person has integrity. This person has character. And this person has a high emotional intelligence. You know what? I just like this person. They're valuable to our company. So no matter what the naysayers are saying, when they get in the meeting, they're going to say, no, I don't have that experience with that person. They deserve the promotion. So we are going to begin to take some questions. Please just give your name and go directly into the question.
Okay. I'm Gail Guest-Brown with Guest-Brown Impact. Yolanda, a question for Yolanda and Olanda. Anyone, actually. Yolanda, I love your pie concept, very simple to the point. Olanda, you spoke about sponsors. You all talked about sponsors. There's a lot of research says that women have mentors and men have sponsors. And sponsors are people who can speak your name in the room that you're not in. And the research says that they're uncomfortable having junior women as, their sponsored person because it might look inappropriate to others to be taking you out to lunch or taking you out for golf. So how did you all overcome that? You all spoke about sponsors, so you had them. What did they look like, and how did you overcome this junior person and the male-female thing?
No, I think it's a great point and a great question. And I do think that keeping the relationship, of course, professional is always top of mind for all parties involved. And I think one of the things that helps is, sometimes in organizations there are formal programs that do the matching based on skill set, based on interest. And so that can help alleviate, some of the tension. But at the same time, there's just going to be some situations where you just got to go for it. And I think it's important to make sure that that individual is the right match for you and has your best interests at heart and can be that person at the table. And one of the things that I will say is, they all come in different packages. And so it's not always necessarily a woman who's my sponsor or a man or a certain race or ethnicity. It does go across the board. And my experience has been quite varied. I don't know if you have the same experience where it has been, just different representation and identities at the table.
Yeah, for me, I'm in tech. Yes. And I don't work for a nonprofit, love the nonprofits, but I'll tell you, in my world, we are here to make a profit all the time. I always tell my team I'm not a 501c3, which I know is for profit too. So my sponsors have actually come from execution. When they see that you execute, they are willing to sponsor you. But I will tell you, there's a thing about sponsorships I have noticed. You better get a sponsor with power. And you gotta know what people think of your sponsor. Because sometimes you have a sponsor, but they are not the right sponsor. And so you have to open your mouth, make sure people know what you want. So I will tell you, I've also had the opposite where someone was trying to sponsor me for something I did not want. And so you have, closed mouths don't get fed.
Right.
coming from the vegan, but they don't get fed. You have to say, this is what I want. So when you are in the room, because you know who's in the room, please make sure you say this when asked about opportunities for me. But in my landscape, my sponsors have come from Truly. They have seen me execute and deliver. And so that gave me credibility for them to be willing to sign off and sponsor me.
Amen. Thank you.
Name and question, please.
Hi, my name is Kamaria Siddiq. Thank you, ladies, for being here. I have a question because I just separated from the military as well as an officer. So it's not the professionalism, it's not my experience that I lack or my understanding of the organization, but the image part. How important is it that I tie my image to femininity and softness to make sure that I am appeasing to what they look for in higher level leadership? Management isn't it, leadership isn't it. It's the image part. And it's hard, you know, when you battle with whether or not it makes sense to be true to yourself in a moment when you're learning about an organization. But how important do you ladies think it is?
Great question.
Yeah, I'll take it. That's a really good question. And, you know, TAPS is a transition program that the military uses when folks are moving into corporate America after being in uniform. Okay, you said soft. I'm probably not the softest person, and I would say that, you know, you don't have to be soft. But you need to make sure that you are the subject matter expert for what you are representing. I will tell you that there is a language that you need to learn to speak. It's a different language than the language we spoke in uniform. There's also a look. And so if you are aspiring to move into the C-suite or to the managerial positions, you need to start looking the part. You need to see what is that dress code for this level in the organization and figure out how to start to look that part. Not being inauthentic to who you are, but this goes along with understanding the environment, understanding the game, and understanding how you need to show up in order to be accepted and allowed to participate. So would love to chat with you after this.
I'll add you on LinkedIn.
I will say that my mentor told me a long time ago, people see you before they hear you. And so once again, you'll have to decide. It's interesting, the conversation for Zoom came up today. I will tell you, dress codes have changed over the years. And look, if your company culture is t-shirts, hoodies, and tennis shoes, then that works for you. If it's not, you can't come in the room saying, but I'm going to be my authentic self, and shame on them for not letting me wear my hoodie and t-shirts if they're all in suits and ties. And so I will say you are going to have to know, even within my own company, every department may have their own culture. A sales team may be different than an engineering team working in a factory floor. But unfortunately, even in today's age, people do see you before they hear you. And I think that for Black women, from hair to colorism, to size, to your language, sometimes you're from the South, you may have a draw or say things differently, fast. It is something that we have to be mindful of, not saying it's right, but you have to decide, can you fit in? And I know we hate to say that. You can be your own authentic self. Be as authentic as your company or organization allows you to be and that you are comfortable being. And people don't like me saying that. I tell my mentees, that is not going to work in this organization. And you can go to HR all day long, but you better have a case stronger than just, they don't like me because I can't wear my black lipstick. It is a little bit more than that. That's a real example, see?
That's real. Thank you for that.
Hi, my name's Akia Key, and my question is kind of two-part, but I wanted to know any recommendations on being typecast for a particular role, but you're trying to move up into leadership. I think I get passed over because I'm so great at this one role that they don't want to lose me in that space. And so I'm constantly battling how to move up, as well as how you battle the aggression. I'm very assertive when I'm talking. I'm passionate about what I talk about. I talk with my hands. And so I'm constantly battling, like, I said it this way. I wasn't rude. I was very polite. I'm smiling. And a counterpart could just be like, you just got to do it and it doesn't matter. And it's fine. But if I say it in the nicest, rainbowish way, you know, it's like, well, you have to watch your tone type thing. So that was my direct question.
I mean, I say to the second part of your question, you know, around how you're resonating with people or people are resonating with you. I mean, I always go back to intent versus impact because it's critical that those things are aligned, and they aren't always aligned, and it's for a lot of different reasons. But I do think that building those relationships in the way that you're described, where you're talking offline, you know, outside of that interaction, because if someone's leaving a interaction feeling frustrated or unfulfilled, or like there wasn't an outcome, it wasn't productive, that is a green light to have a deeper conversation with that person to build the relationship and really center it on intent, you know, versus impact. Because I think once you really draw the line and walk through what each person meant and then how it felt when it landed, that's when you start to grow, and that's when that relationship becomes even stronger.
Ask for feedback when people say that you said something a certain way. Because even if someone says you're direct, what does that mean? Help me understand that. And look, just to your first, if someone is holding you back because they're afraid of losing you, then I think you got your answer this morning. It may be time to go. Because a good boss and a good leader, they know they always come back. So if someone is holding you back because of their issues, go find a backfill and say, Yolanda, I've got the perfect person to backfill me. So you need to really go out and get it done. A good leader will never hold back. Even their top rock star, they will never hold you back.
All right, ladies, so we do have to begin to wrap the panel, but before we do, if you can all leave our audience with a piece of advice to help them get noticed, get that promotion, or land their dream job.
One piece of advice that I always go back to is never let the way someone sees you change the way you see yourself.
That was good.
That was a good one.
That was good. I would say, you know, we've kind of gone to church a little bit here this morning. I would say write your plan and make it plain, and then work your plan. Continue to revisit it, to continue to see when do I need to pivot and shift, but write the plan, make it plain, and then work the plan.
I would say just be okay with being uncomfortable and get comfortable with being uncomfortable. So much of what we've talked about is really hard, and we love what we do, but the reality is it is actually really hard, and a lot of times it can be uncomfortable, and you have to have hard conversations. And I think that sitting in that has been a journey, but it's okay. Yeah.
Just really know what your dream is. And I think that's an important word you said is know your why and know what your dream is, not what someone else's dream is for you. But really take advantage of this conference and really just being in the moment of pray that you really go home saying, I know what my dream truly is. And I pray that you really get it.
Thank you for that, ladies. And I'll just leave everyone with this. A lot of times we don't need another degree, license, or certificate to get advancement. A lot of times we don't need to continue to prove ourselves. We don't need to say yes to every project. And we don't need to continue to just work quietly, waiting for our work to get rewarded or noticed. A lot of times it takes taking up space and controlling our narrative, and that's how you control your destiny. And how do you do that? By speaking, by being your authentic self, by formulating those strategic alliances, and just letting people know that you're there with a purpose. Walk in that purpose, walk in that passion. And if all that doesn't work, my advice is, look, don't go where you're tolerated, go where you're celebrated. If this opportunity is not working, there's another one coming. I would say LinkedIn and Get your resume up and do what you got to do so that you can be in an organization that values your brilliance, your creativity, your ingenuity, and all the things that you have to offer. Don't let anyone take that away from you. Thank you.